People don't crave what's always available. They crave what feels rare. Obsession doesn't begin when you show up. It begins when your absence is felt more deeply than your presence. And here's the truth, no one tells you. You don't need to beg for attention. You don't need to be louder, more attractive, or more emotional. You just need to master emotional contrast. Because human psychology is not addicted to emotion, it's addicted to emotional shifts. When someone feels warmth from you, then coldness, connection, then distance, presence, then silence. They become chemically hooked, not to you, but to the roller coaster you create in their nervous system. That's why the most powerful people are not the most available. They're the most unpredictably precise. They control the rhythm. They control the contrast. And that contrast becomes a psychological addiction, because now your energy isn't just something they enjoy. It's something they fear losing. You've entered the highest level of power, emotional leverage. And it doesn't come from intensity, it comes from timing. It's not about being warm or cold. It's about knowing when to be which. You become the emotional enigma, the one they can't fully read, but can't stop thinking about. And once you learn to pull back strategically, your presence becomes a drug, and your absence becomes withdrawal. This is the emotional power play most people never understand. They keep giving more messages, more affection, more access. But giving more only dilutes your value. What they should be doing is learning to withhold access with surgical precision. Because in a world drowning in availability, the most attractive thing is controlled absence. And in this video, you're going to learn exactly how to use it, how to make your presence felt deeper, how to create obsession without speaking a word, and how to become someone they crave, miss, and fear losing before you even say goodbye. Let's begin. Part 1. Emotional contrast, the root of craving. Humans don't get addicted to stability. They get addicted to contrast. Your mind doesn't remember consistency. It remembers spikes, peaks and dips, warmth and coldness, presence and void. That's the secret most people miss. It's not your presence that creates craving. It's the way your presence contrasts with your absence. When you're always emotionally available, always kind, warm, open, you become predictable. And predictable energy fades into the background. But when you become rhythmically inconsistent, strategically, not emotionally unstable, you create contrast, and that contrast triggers emotional craving. 1. Contrast activates the nervous system. Every time you shift your energy, their nervous system reacts. A text, a glance, a moment of silence. Each one becomes a neurochemical spike. Warmth brings dopamine. Distance brings cortisol. Uncertainty brings obsession. They start chasing not you, but the emotional cycle you orchestrate. You've become a chemical disruptor. And their body begins to crave the highs and fear the lows. That's addiction. 2. Predictability kills craving. People think consistency builds connection. It doesn't. It builds comfort. But comfort is not obsession. Comfort is not power. If they can predict your next move, your energy loses weight. But if your rhythm shifts without warning, without explanation, you become psychologically magnetic. They lean in harder, trying to decode your signal, and the more they try, the more hooked they become. 3. You don't need drama, you need precision. This isn't about manipulation through chaos, it's about controlled intensity. You don't explode, you vanish, you don't argue. You withdraw. You don't chase, you pause. That contrast between full energy and total stillness creates a psychological loop they can't escape. You're not being cold, you're creating space, and in that space, their mind fills in the blanks, usually with craving, doubt, and fear. 4. Craving begins where certainty ends. They can't control you anymore, they can't predict you, and now they feel exposed. Because your energy was never the addiction, it was your rhythm, your unpredictability, your silence between the sound. That's how craving is born. But contrast is only the beginning. Now, let's talk about how to make your presence so impactful, so sharp, so unforgettable, that your absence echoes in their psyche like a void they can't escape. Part 2. Make your presence impactful, not regular. If your presence is predictable, they get used to you. If your presence is constant, they tune you out. But when your presence is sharp, intentional, and limited, it becomes a psychological imprint. And this is the key. You don't need to be everywhere. You just need to leave a mark every time you're there. Because obsession doesn't come from access, it comes from impact. 1. Show up with full energy, then disappear completely. When you're there, be there, fully present, calm, grounded, focused. Let your energy be unmistakable. Let your tone be composed. Let your gaze carry weight. Then withdraw, silently, cleanly. No explanation. The human mind cannot process extremes without fixation. That's how you become memorable. They don't just miss you. They miss how they felt around you and how fast that feeling vanished. 2. Don't be frequent. Be signature. Most people try to be memorable by being constant. You do it by being distinct. Your tone, your presence, your pace, your silences. Design your emotional signature so precisely that even a short moment with you feels intense. You don't need to be the loudest. You just need to be the one they can't replicate in their mind when you're gone. 3. Control the emotional frequency of your energy. Think of your presence like a frequency. Too high and it overwhelms, too low and it's forgettable. But when you show up with deep, centered, still energy, it penetrates. No performance, no excess, just calm dominance. People feel it before you speak, and they remember it long after you leave. 4. Speak less, impact more. Don't overshare. Don't over-engage. Don't explain everything. The less you give, the more their mind fills the space with curiosity and replay. Your presence becomes a puzzle. Your silence becomes a sound loop in their head. And that's how you live rent-free in their psychology without saying a word. 5. Let your withdrawal feel like emotional disruption. If your presence doesn't create contrast, your absence means nothing. So when you step away, do it fully. No half-engagement, no slow fade, just total silence. That absence, following your sharp energy, creates emotional dissonance they can't ignore. They don't just miss you, they start needing you. And that's how craving begins. But presence alone isn't enough. Now we shift into the most powerful weapon of all, scarcity. Because what's rare becomes addictive, and what's inaccessible becomes dominant. Part BA. The scarcity trigger. Absence as psychological weapon. Craving doesn't come from presence, it comes from absence, and not just any absence, but calculated, strategic, intentional absence. This is the scarcity effect, one of the most powerful psychological levers ever discovered. What's scarce becomes valuable. What's rare becomes desired. What's inaccessible becomes unforgettable. And your energy is no exception. 1. Scarcity activates survival psychology. The human brain is wired for survival, and scarcity equals threat. When something disappears, the mind doesn't just miss it. It panics. It starts replaying, reanalyzing, craving resolution. That's why your absence triggers more emotional intensity than your presence ever could. And if you control that absence with precision, you control their emotional rhythm without touching them. 2. Pull back before they expect it. Timing is everything. Don't wait until they drift. Don't wait until they disrespect. Withdraw while your energy still feels powerful. That shock creates emotional dissonance. They start asking, "Did I do something wrong? Why does it feel like something's missing? What happened to that intensity?" That vacuum becomes psychological fuel. They start chasing, not because you asked, but because you vanished while you still had impact. 3. Your silence speaks louder than attention. Most people try to win influence by showing up more, but what really builds obsession is the silence you leave behind. No explanation, no drama, just distance. The absence becomes a question they can't answer, and the mind hates unanswered questions. So it loops, obsessively, trying to solve you, feel you, recall you. That's the emotional trap. You're not there, yet you're everywhere in their thoughts. 4. Create emotional incompleteness. Never give closure too soon. Never satisfy fully. Leave something open-ended. A subtle pause, an incomplete sentence, a sudden disappearance after a deep moment. You're training their nervous system to feel your withdrawal as emotional incompleteness. And now they return, not out of love or interest, but to close a loop you intentionally left open. That's not connection, that's control. 5. Scarcity multiplies emotional weight. If your energy is always present, it becomes noise. But if it's scarce, it becomes symbolic. One glance equals weight. One message equals echo. One silence equals disruption. Scarcity turns every interaction into impact. You no longer speak often, yet every silence shakes them. You no longer show up constantly, yet your absence leaves them unsettled. And this is the shift. You don't control them by showing up. You control them by choosing when not to. Coming next, now let's move from scarcity to strategic control. How to manage your emotional availability like a psychological lever to guide their reactions, desire, and attachment. Part bon, kim soat nipju, susan sankam, ksut nhu motchiakua, numtram namoi tu. Power isn't about intensity, it's about timing. You don't dominate people by being emotional. You dominate them by controlling emotional rhythm, because it's not just what they feel around you. It's how often they feel it, and how suddenly it's taken away. The nervous system doesn't get addicted to stability, it gets addicted to emotional unpredictability. And once you control that rhythm, you become the invisible force guiding their attachment. 1. Emotional availability should be a lever, not a door. Most people offer emotions like an open door, always accessible, always warm, always safe. But high-level emotional control means you use your energy as leverage, a dial, not a faucet. Sometimes you're warm, briefly. Sometimes you're cold, completely. Sometimes you're neutral, intentionally unreadable. This rhythm triggers a loop of engagement, confusion, craving. You're not available. You're strategically unpredictable. 2. Alternate between emotional presence and soft detachment. You don't have to be extreme to be powerful. Subtle shifts are more effective than loud ones. One day, responsive, engaged, magnetic. Next day, calm, slow replies, low emotional tone. No explanation, no conflict, just contrast. This rhythm creates psychological uncertainty. And that uncertainty becomes emotional gravity. They start chasing not your attention, but your next emotional shift. 3. Let them feel the absence before they expect it. Pull back while things are warm. That disruption cuts deeper than any fight. It leaves their nervous system exposed, craving another hit of your presence. You don't need to disappear completely. Just reduce signal strength. Short replies, delayed responses, slight tonal shift. It's not distance, it's emotional calibration. 4. Keep them wondering, not secure. Security doesn't create craving, uncertainty does. And the goal isn't chaos, it's calculated contrast. Let them feel, this person is close, but not mine. This connection is strong, but unpredictable. This energy is real, but never guaranteed. Now you've activated their psychological dependence, not because you promised anything, but because you controlled what they could never fully grasp. 5. Become emotionally ambiguous, not emotionally absent. The real weapon is emotional ambiguity. You're present but distant. You're engaged but detached. You're calm but unreadable. This subtle ambiguity forces their mind into analysis mode. They start reading between lines, over-interpreting signals, replaying interactions. You don't speak much, but they hear you in their head constantly, and that's the ultimate leverage. Coming up next, now let's escalate to the highest level, how to become their mental reference point, the standard they compare everyone to, the presence they can't unfeel, even in your silence. Part 5. Become the mental reference point. The most powerful influence is the one that stays long after you're gone. True psychological dominance isn't about control in the moment. It's about resonance after absence. You don't just want them to feel your presence. You want them to compare everything else to it. You become the mental reference point, the emotional standard, the invisible benchmark that every new interaction falls short of. And once that happens, you win, even in silence. 1. Emotional signature becomes memory code. You've already created contrast. You've already created scarcity. You've already controlled rhythm. Now it's time to make your emotional signature unforgettable. The tone of your voice, the stillness of your energy, the clarity of your gaze, the power in your presence. These are not just moments, they're neural imprints. And once their nervous system registers your energy as distinct, it will search for it in others and never find it again. 2. Subtle presence, deep impact, long-term echo. You don't need to be explosive. You need to be penetrating. A short conversation, a single glance, a moment of silence that carries weight. That's how you stay lodged in their mind, not through noise, but through depth. Your absence becomes louder than others' presence. Your silence becomes a sound loop in their memory, and they start chasing that feeling without realizing they're chasing you. 3. Let them try to replace you and fail. Once you've established emotional imprint, something predictable happens. They try to replace it. They seek others who feel like you. But no one matches the emotional frequency you created. Because it wasn't just your words, it was your energy pattern. It wasn't just interaction, it was psychological architecture. And now they compare every new person to you, and none of them stand a chance. That's power without presence. 4. Create echo points before you withdraw. Before you disappear, create an emotional high point. A subtle compliment, a deep moment of connection, an unexpected silence in the middle of warmth. You anchor an experience, then vanish. Now every time they feel that craving again, their mind loops back to you, automatically. It's not personal anymore, it's neurological. 5. Psychological occupancy without physical access. You don't need to stay close. You don't need to engage. You just need to be the one they can't forget, even when they try. You've transcended emotional availability. You've become mental presence. And now you've won the game without playing it. Coming up next, let's bring it all together. One final message that shifts the paradigm completely. True emotional power doesn't come from what you give, but from what you strategically withdraw. Your power is not in what you give. It's in what you withdraw. Most people try to become irresistible by giving more attention, more love, more presence, more access. But true emotional power doesn't come from what you give. It comes from what you withhold. Because when you control what others can feel from you, you control how deeply they crave it. You don't chase connection. You create emotional voids. You don't beg for attention. You build psychological scarcity. That's how you rise above the noise. You don't dominate with force. You dominate with absence. You don't manipulate with emotion. You manipulate with rhythm. Your power is in your contrast, your unpredictability, your withdrawal, your silence. You've stopped trying to be liked. You've started becoming unforgettable. Now you're not just someone they admire. You're someone they can't escape in thought. And here's the most important shift. When they crave you, you no longer need them. When they fear your absence, you've already won. Because emotional power isn't loud. It's surgical, it's subtle, it's sovereign. You are not here to overgive. You are here to control impact. And from now on, your presence will feel like fire, and your absence will feel like withdrawal. Let that be your signature. Let that be your advantage. Let that be your silent control. Because obsession doesn't happen by accident. It's designed by the one who understands contrast, scarcity, and psychological rhythm. And now, you are that one. End of game.